All right. So, this paper that I gave you on the chapter walk is going to be something that's going to be very important for us. Now, with the chapter walk, the whole idea behind this and what you're going to need to do, there's going to be some stuff that I have highlighted, and there's going to be some stuff that you are going to add, that you're going to have to write in. So, with this, we are actually going to do like annotated notes on our chapter walk paper. That's why you needed a highlighter, and that's why you needed pen or pencil to write with. So, just so you understand, this paper here, our chapter walk paper, that's going to be like our instructions for how to do a chapter walk. So you're not going to turn this paper in. This is going to become notes, and it's going to stay in your social studies binder, and it is what you are going to use every time we do a chapter walk. Okay? So you're not answering your questions on this. Does that make sense? Okay. Second thing that we need to know, with our chapter walk, the notes that are on here, they are on Canvas. So this is more for people who might be watching the video that were absent. The things that you need to highlight is also on Canvas as well. Okay. Now, I don't want us working ahead. When I scroll up, you're going to see some things that are like highlighted and written down. I don't want you working ahead of me. So we're going to do like we did before, where I'm going to draw an arrow to the part that I want you working on. And once we're finished with that part, I'm going to put a check mark. So we need to be on the part with an arrow. Does that part make sense?
Yeah.
Awesome. May I please have a volunteer to read? Actually, I'm going to zoom this out just a little bit. So I'll have you read the introduction. You're going to read 1 and 2 because 2 is really short. Can you read 3? And then is there a volunteer to read 4? Sir, what am I getting ready to tell you?
What?
When is it appropriate to sharpen pencils? When is it not okay to sharpen pencils?
It's not okay when the teacher's talking.
What was the teacher just doing?
Talking.
So was that okay?
Nope.
All right, I need for us to step that up. Okay? So we are going to see
Wait, do you want
that, yes ma'am, go ahead.
to read these two?
Huh? Yes, you're going to read both parts of the, introduction. So please go ahead and read that. If you will notice, what color are our lights turning to?
Red.
Red. So what is our auto champ setting going to be?
No talking.
Thank you. Let's make sure we are remembering that. All right, go ahead.
Chapter tour or text walk review is a strategy used to review text. The text review prepares students to understand what they will be reading. This strategy can be adapted to use with any text but works best with text that contain chapter introductions and summaries. Chapter questions, pictures, diagrams, and other graphics, bold or colored vocabulary, words, or concepts.
Thank you very much. So, oops, my fault. I hit the wrong thing. That was supposed to be Alt, not Control. We got this. There we go. Alt M. There we go. All right. So, when we think about the chapter walk, notice this is super important for us to understand. And you have to make sure you're listening to this part because otherwise you're going to wind up doing more work than you need to do. Okay? So, when we do a chapter walk, and this is a part we're going to highlight for our introduction. We're going to highlight that our text walk is a strategy used to preview text. We're going to highlight, prepare students to understand what they will be reading. So please highlight these 2 things right now. And then in the second paragraph, what we're going to be highlighting is that it works best with text that contains chapters, questions, pictures, diagrams, graphics, bold or colored vocabulary words. Okay? So please highlight that stuff now. So like we were saying, if we stop and think about our textbook, there's a couple things, and I want us to be honest, okay? Let's be honest with each other. I try to be honest with you, you try to be honest with me, except for when you don't. If we really stop and think about it, let's pretend that I, as your teacher, say, all right, everybody, we're going to read pages 99 to 106. So if that happens, what most of you are going to do, and again, we're being honest, it's okay. You don't have to try to lie. You ain't got to lie, Craig. You ain't got to lie. When a teacher tells you, read pages 99 to 106, you open up your book to page 99, you find the words that are in black, you start reading the words that are in black, you read all the words that are in black to page 106. Now, if we're actually being really truthful, I know that for some of us, sometimes you get to the end of the page, you're like, all right, I read what the teacher told me to read. Wait a minute, I don't even remember what I just read. Has that ever happened to any of you? Yeah, it has. It happens all the time. I know it, you know it, right?
We all know.
So, I'm also going to go ahead and assume, if we're being honest, that when we look at a textbook, we don't ever, most of us, we don't ever look at maps and charts and graphs. Most of us, we just kind of ignore that. Am I right? Yeah, I know. And pictures, well, we might look at the picture if it catches our eye, but we aren't really going to be looking at pictures really closely. And if we do look at the pictures, we definitely are not reading the caption that goes with the pictures. We might be like, oh, that's a cool picture, and then we move on. Because, again, I know it, you know it, let's be honest, you're just trying to get the reading done. And if the teacher said read this, you're going to read that as fast as possible so you can be done and move on with your life. Is this sounding accurate?
Yes.
Yeah, right? But here's the thing that I need for you to think about. So, the people who made this book, the people who edited this book, the people who put this book together, right? If you really stop and think about it, they had creative freedom when they did this book. So, out of every picture that humans have ever created, because in our day with digital technology, any picture that has been made, everything from a cave painting in France that we learned about to the most modern AI created picture, any picture that's been created, they could have put in this book, right? So on page 102, out of every picture that humans have ever made in the history of people, they chose to put this picture here, right? So even if we don't think this picture is important, did the people who made this book think this picture was important? Yeah. And not only did they think it was important, they thought it was important to put here, right? So we're going to try to think about why it's important for us to look at some of these other things, okay? So, who did I say was going to read 1 and 2? Was it you? Yep. All right, please go ahead and read numbers 1 and 2.
Model the strategy by having students look at the picture. Ask what the pictures seem to be about. What do they think the author may have included in this chapter? Next, have students read the captions. Do they provide any additional information?
Thank you. Go ahead and also, you see the part that I wrote in pencil, or in pencil is written in here in the little margins. Please go ahead and read those as well.
Write it out.
So, yes. So what I want you to do, because we're working on 1 and 2 together, that's why they both have arrows next to it. So, on number 1, what I need for you to highlight is look at the pictures. Why do they think the author may have included them? Okay? And then you're going to write down this part. Pick one photo that speaks to you and answer the questions. For number 2, I need you to highlight, read the captions. Do they provide additional information? And I need for you to write down what new information did I learn from the captions. So go ahead and get those 2 things written down. Okay, so remember the whole point of a chapter walk is to help us to look at those things that we honestly don't ever look at, but really help us understand the reading. Okay, so the first step, because each one of these numbers is a step, and you follow the steps in order. That's why we're making these instructions and adding the stuff to it. So the first thing that you're going to do for whatever pages Mr. Seymour gives you, and I know it says chapter walk, but I honestly tend to do this for a section instead of the whole chapter. Because when you do it for the whole chapter, it gets really overwhelming. So, just to give you a heads up, we're going to be practicing using topic 3, lesson 1. Okay? We're not going to do that now, but later on today, when we go out into the neighborhood, that's what you'll be doing your chapter walk on. So, topic 3, lesson 1 starts on page 99, and it goes to page 106. So basically, the first step is you are going to take a look at every picture that's between page 99 and 106. Okay? So you're going to take a look at every one of the pictures between 99 and 106. And we will kind of finish this after lunch. So since we're back from lunch now, just as a reminder, the first step or the first part we do for our chapter walk is you're going to look at every picture in the assigned pages. You're going to read the caption for every assigned picture in the pages. So when you go in the neighborhood, that's the first thing you're going to do. After you have looked at every picture, after you have read every caption in the assigned pages, you're going to pick one photo that speaks to you. Okay? And that photo can speak to you for different reasons. Maybe that photo speaks to you because it was an interesting picture. Or maybe you liked the colors. Or maybe it was something that like you were confused about. The reason why you picked the picture doesn't matter. But once you've picked the one picture that you liked, you are going to answer the following questions. You're going to answer the question, why did that picture speak to you? You're going to answer the question, why do you think the editor or author included that picture? And you're going to answer the question, what did you learn from the captions about that one picture? So again, you are not having to answer questions for each one of the 6 pictures. You look at the 6 pictures, you read about the 6 pictures, you only write down answers for one of the 6 pictures. So does that part make sense? So like we said, 1 and 2 kind of go together, okay? So 1 and 2, when you're doing your steps, you can kind of mush those 2 together because they work together, okay? So we should understand 1 and 2. Who was my volunteer to read number 3? All right, yep, go for it. Number 3.
Next, have students look at any maps, graphs, or charts in the section. What information does this graphic provide? What does the graphic tell me about the type of information that will be in the section? Students should then look for any big ideas, words, or headings in the bold type, colored words, underlined words, or even words with quote.
Just three. So that's okay. What are the maps trying to teach me? So for number 3, this is what you need to highlight for number 3. You're going to highlight, look at any maps, charts, or graphs in the section. You're going to highlight, what does the graphic tell me about the type of information that will be in the section? And then what you're going to write down is, what are the maps trying to teach me? So go ahead and get that highlighted and written down now, please. Okay, so number 3. Truthfully, number 3 is going to kind of take a long time, okay? Because you're going to be looking at any map. So for whatever our pages are, any map that you see, you're going to have to follow these steps. Any graph that you see, you're going to have to follow those steps. Any chart that you see, you're going to have to follow those steps, okay? So do you remember how I told you to turn to page 94? So in your book, you should be on page 94. Flip over one page so that you are on page 96, 97. Okay? So we should be on pages 96 and 97. So here's why number 3 is going to take a long time. Because you're not just looking at the charts, you're going to have to analyze each one of those things to try to figure out what the section is trying to teach you, or what that graphic is trying to teach you. So if we look on page 96 and 97, are there any maps on pages 96 and 97? Yes or no? Yeah, right? Now, are there any charts or graphs on pages 96 and 97?
Yes.
Yeah, what is there? Timeline, right? You've got a map and you have a timeline. So, for step number 3, after you have looked at every picture, after you've read the caption for every picture, after you have picked out your favorite picture and explained why you like that picture, why you think the author put the picture there, and what you learned from the caption, you're going to look at each map. Now, last year you should have learned whenever you look at a map, the first thing you need to look for, well, different teachers say different things, and it's kind of an opinion thing. Some teachers tell you to look at the map key or the map legend first. I tend to say look at the title of the map first, then look at the map key or the map legend. But whichever order you choose to do it in is fine. Now, if we look at our map on page 97, does this map have a title? Yes or no?
Yes.
I hear some yes and some no.
Yes.
So, does it have a title? So, those are labels, but does the map itself have a title?
No.
No, the map doesn't have a title. That's strange. Does this map have a map key?
Yes.
No, it doesn't have a map key either, does it? Now, here's why this is important, because remember, what does the graphic tell me about the type of information? So first off, if I'm using my social studies brain and I see a map that doesn't have a title and doesn't have a map key, that doesn't sound like a very good map, does it? So we have to stop and think, why did they give us a map with no title and no map key? Well, either they did a bad job, or this is not the entire map and we're looking at a zoomed in part of a map that's somewhere else. Which do you think it probably is? This is probably a zoomed in map. So, if this is a zoomed in map, what can that tell us about what we're going to learn about? Well, let's think about it. What are some of the physical and political things that we see on this map on page 97? What are some of the things you see on the map? You already said a couple. What did you say before? Africa. What else?
The Red Sea.
Red Sea. What else? Nile River. What else? Mediterranean Sea. What else? Asia. What else? Canaan. Right? Lower Egypt. Upper Egypt. Sinai Peninsula. Asia. Eastern Desert. Western Desert. Right? Upper Egypt, which we had said, but we got that. Right? So now, we've got all this information from a map that doesn't have a title and doesn't have a map key. But we can still learn a lot of stuff, can't we? So, I'm going to show you how I would think through this as a social studies teacher. I know this map doesn't have a map key or a title, so it's zoomed in. Usually, if you zoom in, are you going to put the most important stuff on the side or in the middle?
On the side.
So, if I zoom in on something, I'm going to put what I want you to focus off to the side?
No.
Right? I'm probably going to put what I want you to focus on in the middle, right? Because if I can zoom in, I can make the map however I want it to look. So I'm probably going to put the important thing in the middle. Okay? Now, a couple of other things that I noticed. I see the Red Sea is on this map. I see the Mediterranean Sea is on this map. Is this the first time I've heard of those two things in Mr. Seymour's class?
No.
No. When did we hear about the Red Sea and the Mediterranean Sea in Mr. Seymour's class? Mesopotamia. Right? So now, in my head, I'm thinking, well, if this was on the map, if the Mediterranean Sea and Red Sea were on the map for Mesopotamia, and they're also on the map for Egypt, well, they're probably kind of close to each other, right? Now, it doesn't mean it's walking distance, but it's not like we see the Pacific Ocean on this map. So automatically, I know Egypt is kind of close, or the same part of the world as Mesopotamia, right? Now, what else can I learn from this map that doesn't have a title or a map key? Well, I see that there's a western desert and an eastern desert. Well, I know we just got done learning about a civilization where the biome was a,
Desert.
right? And so I already know some things about having to live in a desert. I know there's not going to be rainfall. I know that there has to be some source of water for people to be able to have civilizations there. I know that you're probably going to need to have a river because you can't rely on rainwater in a desert, right? So I already know just by looking at this picture, without even knowing anything else, I know that there's going to be a river there. And I know that river is going to be important. What can I infer, like our learning goal, about that river? In order for people to grow crops there and be able to have food, what is that river going to have to do?
Have to have blood.
Nutrients.
It's going to have floods so that you get the good mud, the silt, right? So we've learned all this stuff before and we're seeing it again. So automatically, without reading anything in this book, I already know Egypt's in the desert. I know because it's in a desert, there's going to be a river. I know that river is going to be important. I know that river is going to flood. Right? I'm able to use my prior knowledge to infer all of that stuff. So, when we talk about what is the graphic telling me about the type of information, that's kind of how we analyze it. That's how we look at it. Don't just write down, it's a map, it shows me where Egypt is. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. You can take that. Well, that's teacher one. You can take this one. You're welcome. So, you're going to do the same thing for any charts. If you look at a timeline, what is that timeline trying to teach you? What is that timeline trying to tell you about? So, again, yes, in general, what happened during that time, but is that pretty specific? Because every timeline tells me what happened during that time period. Now, am I going to go and put down everything that's in the timeline? No. But I'm going to kind of identify, okay, this timeline starts in 4000 BC. It goes all the way to 1 BC or 1 Common Era. That's 4,000 years of history. Now, if this timeline starts in 4000 and goes to basically 1 CE, what can I infer about how long Egypt was around as a civilization? A long time, right? Because if Egypt was only around for 100 years, would they give me a timeline that's 4,000 years? No, we already know because we talked about what timelines zoomed in and out look like. So if they're giving me a timeline that's 4,000 years, their history was probably around 4,000 years. So don't just tell me it gives me the time. I already know that. You already know that. What specific is this trying to tell us? Okay, does that difference make sense? Awesome. Okay. So we should be on step 4 now. Remember, step 4 is going to take a little bit of time as well. So we should be on step 4. Let's see if we get our chapter there. Hopefully we do. May I have a volunteer to read step 4? Well, yeah, you were next. No, you did 1 and 2. So we have some people who haven't read yet. Go for it. And then can you read 5? So read 4, read 5.
Students should then look for any big ideas, words, or headings in bold type, colored words, underlined words, or words with their pronunciation given. Do students know these words? Do these words give any clues about the subject of the text piece?
And then what are you going to write in?
Like, what am I going to write? Are there any words I do not know? How can I learn them?
Thank you. So here's what you need to highlight for number 4. We're going to be looking for big ideas. Okay? Now, if this is telling us we have to look for big ideas, we need to know what that means. So here's how a chapter walk defines a big idea. So a big idea is something that's bold. So if you read in the book and there's words that are bold, that's a hint it's a big idea, important word. If it's a different color, that's a hint that it's a big idea, important word. If it's underlined, that's a hint that it's a big idea, important word. If it gives you how to pronounce it in parentheses, that's a hint it's a big idea, important word. So if we stop and think about it, does our book give us big idea words? Yeah. What are some of the colors that we know from our book that are used for big idea words? Yeah.
Blue, black.
hold on, one at a time. Blue, right? So blue, that's like primary source information. You need to read that. Yeah. Orange, that's section headings. That's an important big idea. Yeah. Green, that's section subheadings. A big idea. Yeah. Magenta, those are questions or key ideas that you need to focus in on. Remember, we had this in our notes already. What other color do we have that's not technically a color?
White. Black.
Brown.
Well, we're just kind of guessing now. Think about our book. What other things do we see that help us to know? Yellow highlighter, right? Those are vocabulary words. Vocabulary words are also bold. So, remember, our first step, you look at every picture. You read the caption for every picture. Step number 2, you pick your favorite picture. You tell me why you like that picture, why you think the author put the picture in the book, and what you learned about the picture from the caption. Step 3, you look at every map, chart, or graph. You analyze it and try to figure out why it's there. What does that map want you to learn? Kind of like how we did together. Step 4, you're going to write down every vocabulary word. Okay? Turn to page 99 in your book. Here's a hint that can help you with that. So you see on page 99 in the get ready to read part, the vocabulary words are there. So you don't have to look for the vocabulary words in the section. You can copy them down from there. Now remember, have we read the book yet? Have we read the part yet?
No.
Is Mr. Seymour expecting you to know what these vocabulary words mean?
No.
Am I expecting you to write down the definitions now? No. All we're doing is writing down the words so we get an idea of what we are learning. Okay? So you're going to write down every vocabulary word. You're going to write down every section heading that's in orange. You're going to write down every section subheading that's in green. My suggestion is write the section subheading in orange and then write the section subheadings that go with it in green right underneath it. Then maybe you scoot over on your paper or your chart, you write the next heading in orange and then write the subheadings that go with it in green so that everything stays organized. But basically for step 4, you are writing down anything that has a color, a highlight, or a bold. Okay? So, you know how we said number 3 was going to take a long time? Honestly, number 4 is probably going to take a really long time. Okay, so be prepared for that. That's where most of your time is going to be spent. Okay? Do we need a second to get this highlighted and written down? Or do we get it already? Yeah? Okay. Okay, can you please go ahead and read number 5? Go ahead and read number 5.
Read the first paragraph of the text, intro, and the last paragraph summary. What seems to be the major focus of the chapter? What key ideas are mentioned based on this information? What do you think you learned from the passage? Why?
Thank you. All right, so number 5. You're going to read the first paragraph and the last paragraph. And I'm going to be honest with you, even though this is highlighted in our new book, the last paragraph isn't a summary paragraph. So it's not really helpful to read the last paragraph. Reading the first paragraph is really helpful. Okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to highlight, read the first paragraph of the text, and you're going to highlight what do you think you will learn from this passage and why. And here's what you're going to write in the margin. Read the intro for each section. Okay? So, for the intro, there's like 2 parts to that we're going to focus on. Okay? So, there's a part that's called Get Ready to Read. So, the Get Ready to Read part, we should already be on page 99. If you look on page 99, you will see there's a blue box. And that blue box says Get Ready to Read. And there's some parts to it. It has Start Up. So you're going to read Start Up. You're going to read Guiding Questions. You're going to read Taking Notes. And you're going to read Practice Vocabulary. Now, remember, do you answer any of the questions right now? No, you are just reading. So you're going to read the part called Get Ready to Read. And you're going to read any paragraphs. And just so you know, if you ever see like a letter P with 2 lines, that is a shortcut for paragraphs. So you're going to read any paragraphs before, the orange subheading. Okay? All right. So, when you do step 5, you're going to read the stuff in the blue box that says get ready to read. You're going to read any paragraphs that come before the first heading. So on page 99, that'll be the paragraph that starts off like the Fertile Crescent and ends with the words Fertile Crescent. Okay? Okay. So number 6. This part's going to be super quick. So, any questions that appear at the end of a text section or chapter are helpful when preparing to read. So, you are going to read any questions that you come across. Remember, in our book, questions are going to be magenta and red. So, you're going to read all questions, but don't answer any. So, you're just reading the questions. You're not answering the questions right now. Does that make sense? Yes, maybe no.
Sure.
Awesome. So, remember, when we do the chapter walk, you have not read this section yet, right? We have not learned anything from this book, from the text. But even before we read, you have now looked at every single picture. You have now read the caption for every single picture. You have answered questions and analyzed one picture. You have looked at every map. You have looked at every chart. You have looked at every graph and analyzed them. You have looked at every section heading and read what every section heading is. You have read what every section subheading is. You have read what every vocabulary word is. You have read what every question in the section is. By the time you have done all that, do you think you're going to have a really good idea of what this section is trying to teach you?
Yes.
Yeah. You should have a really good idea. So that way when you do start to read, it should make it, honestly, 1, easier to read because you kind of know what to expect. And 2, it should help stop that thing where you read it and then you're like, what did I just read? Because by the time you get to reading, you've already seen this a ton. Okay? So that's why we do the chapter walk. So in just a moment, you're going to be going out to the neighborhood. Okay? We'll turn the lights to blue, so you should know what that means. If you don't, it's on the backboard. Okay, so now that we have a good idea of what's going on now that we have a good idea of how to do the chapter walk, you're going to practice it. So for the people who are at home that maybe missed this, here's what you're going to do. We are doing our chapter walk on topic 3, lesson 1. It starts on page 99 and goes to page 106. Okay? You are going to go through all the steps. So you're going to look for the pictures. You're going to look at the maps, charts, and graphs. You're going to write down the big idea words. You're going to look at the questions and all that sort of stuff. Okay? You can do this with a partner group. You may work in groups of up to 4. Okay? Here's what I suggest. I suggest that you create a Google Drive or a Google Doc to do your chart on. That way, if you have, you can do color. It's a lot easier to do the color stuff. You can create a chart to help you to see the vocabulary words and all that sort of stuff. Okay? You can do it on paper if you want to. That's totally fine. But I think a chart would be helpful. Or I think doing it on a Google Doc would be helpful. Okay? Make sure that you are following all of the steps. At this point, our lights are going to be blue. Remember, Miss Platt is also working in the neighborhood.
They just left.
So, but I think they'll be coming back.
Yeah, they will.
So, you all need to make sure that we are like at a 0.5 voice, because if everybody's talking at a level 1 voice, it gets kind of loud since she's actually teaching out there. Okay? So at this point, our lights are blue. You may go ahead and work out there. If you want to stay in the class, you can stay in the class.